Could lead a horse to water. Yeah. Yes. I call him Jake. He's
Wait, no, I should just tell him the whole deal and what he said. He said he's taking out the
He's sick and tired of being a demolition company. They just did a deal. I'm more important. I guess there must be a bunch of people calling crap about state council.
Okay, so if you can put your name, if you're here for the public hearing, that is, and then this is, there's a summary here, and then this is the PowerPoint that he's gonna be going through, so if you wanna take one and pass it along. Okay. Hi, Carol.
Oh, I just take
It'll be all presented if you want to write notes.
Well, being 7:01, November 10th, 2015 City Council meeting to order. All council members present, with the exception of Mr. Nielsen,
Here's one more here.
Mayor Ryan, Attorney Grigg, Administrator Balsam. So the first item on the agenda after call to order and roll call is citizens' comments on anything not already on the agenda. Stepping forward, then we can move on to adopting the agenda. Any additions or corrections to the agenda? Richard? Do we have a motion to accept the agenda then as printed?
Who did that?
John, you second. Doug. All in favor? Aye. Consent agenda. Is there anything that should be removed from the consent agenda, or do we have a motion to accept that? Second. Fred and John. All in favor? Aye. Moving on to presentations and public hearings. First item is a presentation to Sherry Swinhausen to recognize Scott's service to the city on the Utilities Commission and Library Board. And let's say we really, really do appreciate the service he's given us. Careful, that will fall out. Thank you for everything he's done for us. We really do appreciate it. Thank you. Like many others, we do continue to miss Scott here. He was a genuine person and a genuinely good man. Next item, public hearing for First Street Improvement Project. Hearing notices have been sent to property owners. City engineer will review the project with PowerPoint was used in council work session, and then City Attorney Riggs will provide an overview of the assessment process. Joe, I think you can pick up from here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The PowerPoint is up on the screen. Good evening, my name is Joe Ryan. I'm the city engineer for the city of Kenyon. I'm with the firm of Bolton and Menk, engineers and surveyors. We've been city engineers for the city of Kenyon for the past year. Can you all see the PowerPoint okay? Do we need to change the lights at all? Okay. There was a handout that I think most of you got. I hope we had enough copies. We can run some more copies if we need. There also was a handout on the PowerPoint presentation in case you want to follow along with the slides and take any notes.
Here's another PowerPoint thing back there. You okay?
So we've got a PowerPoint presentation. It'll probably take about 30 minutes to go through. We've got a lot of good information in there. I know you've got questions on the project and on the cost and things, so I'd ask if you would to let us get through the presentation, because if you do have questions, some of your questions might get answered in the information that we present, so we might answer your questions right along the way. If we get to the presentation, you still have questions, certainly feel free. We'll stay as long as we need you to answer questions on the project. Brian Holtz is here with me tonight too. He's with our firm. He's been helping me with the design of this project. We'll document all of your names and addresses and all the questions you have, so that if we've got to do any follow-up, we certainly will do the follow-up. So, to jump right into the presentation, this is the public improvement hearing being held for the proposed project to make improvements to First Street in the city of Kenyon, and tonight is November 10th. So the brief agenda is to review why we are having this public hearing. Then we'll review the feasibility report that we've prepared on the project. That will go through the existing conditions in the project area, the proposed work that's supposed to be done, the costs of that work, and how that work is intended to be financed. We will review the assessment information, and then we'll go over the project schedule. So first of all, just a little reference, when you look at a public street, you don't see the majority of the infrastructure that's actually involved with the street. All you see is the surface. But there's actually quite a bit going on underground too. There's typically sanitary sewer that's shown in the green there on the drawing that runs up and down the street, with then service lines that come from the mains down the center of the street out to the properties. There's the water lines that's shown in blue on the drawing. It's typically off to one side of the street, running up and down the street with service lines that come out to feed the hydrants and also to serve the homes. Then there's also usually underground storm sewer that collects the stormwater runoff from the surface of the street and collects it and discharges it to the ponds and the lakes and the rivers. And then there's other underground utilities such as telephone or electric or natural gas that's out in this street as well. The street section itself is a structural section. It's comprised of the blacktop pavement on the top surfacing, then an aggregate-based gravel, a designed engineered material below that, and then prepared soil below that. So that's kind of a cross-section of what's in a typical city street, and that's what we're here to talk about tonight, is the improvements we need to make on what's considered the public infrastructure, being the sewer and the water in the street. A couple of reference documents. The city had a pavement management plan prepared in 2010 that looked at all the streets in the city, including First Street. The city also had a wastewater facility plan put together in 2012 that looked at the sanitary sewer collection system. And we'll go through a little bit of the findings of both of those. Pavement management plan rated the condition of all the streets in the city, and it recommended improvements based on those rating systems. So somebody physically went out there and went up down every street and counted cracks and how often they showed up and what types of cracks there were and what kind of condition the curb was in, and they ranked those streets. Out of the streets, 74% of the streets were ranked in pretty good condition and would just need maintenance type activities to keep them going. 20% of the system was ranked as needing rehabilitation, which primarily means the surface was wearing out and it was going to need to be resurfaced at some point. But then there were 6% of the system that was ranked as the street was failing and was in the worst condition of the system, and it was designated as needing full reconstruction. of that entire section, that structural section of the street. First Street was identified as one of those 6% needing the reconstruction. Now, switching over to the wastewater facility plan, the facility plan analyzed the sanitary sewer collection system in the city, identified a number of issues. One of the main issues that it identified, and most of you are probably aware of this, there are a number of private sanitary sewer lines in the city. Typically, the sanitary sewer is provided by the city, and the city owns and operates and maintains that system, and the residents pay for that with the rates they pay for their sewer. In the city of Kenyon, there are a number of locations where there's private lines that were installed privately and are not owned by the city. And so some of the homes aren't served directly by the city system. And this creates some issues for the city and for the homeowners as well. So First Street has private sanitary sewer mains that were identified. And in some of the private sanitary sewer mains were constructed and located to the point where they could be converted over to be city mains. Other ones are either because of their condition or their location or their size, they're just not up to city standard and they can't be accepted. So they need to be replaced with new mains that the city can own and maintain. And unfortunately, that's the case in the situation with First Street is the existing private mains out there cannot be converted over to be city mains. We'll need to install new city mains to replace the private mains that are out there. So next slide. So the city wants to comply with the goals that they found and the recommended outcomes of their pavement management plan they did in 2010 and the wastewater facilities plan they did in 2012. So the pavement management plan recommended reconstruction of First Street. The wastewater facility plan recommended replacement of those sewer mains. And we can do both of those in a coordinated fashion if we do a reconstruction project on First Street. Gives us a chance to upgrade those sewers and gives us a chance to rebuild the street as well, since the sewer we have to tear up the street to do the sewer anyways. So the City Council recognized this and authorized us to do some preliminary investigation to see if the project was feasible. And they ultimately authorized us to prepare what's called a feasibility report. And that document has been prepared, and I've got one of the books right here. We've printed several of the books. This is a formal document that was ordered by the city. And what it really is intended to do is answer the three basic questions of what work is recommended in the project area, how much will that work cost, and how will that work be paid for. And those questions determine whether or not the project is feasible and whether or not the council wants to move forward with the project. So that's what we're here tonight is ultimately the council will choose at the end of the public hearing tonight. They'll accept the report and then choose whether they want to proceed with the project or whether they don't want to proceed with the project. So the project area that was looked at was the section of First Street starting from Red Wing Avenue and coming in 3 blocks to Bullis Street. So essentially right to where the parking lot starts for Depot Park. So that 3-block section of First Street was looked at. You can see a couple of other blue lines there. We looked at a couple of other things that kind of tie in with that as potential alternate work. But the main project that we looked at was the First Street project for those 3 blocks from Red Wing Avenue to Bullis Street. What we looked at to determine, first we look at the existing condition of the different components of the infrastructure, the street, the sanitary sewer system, the water distribution system, and the storm sewer system. So we'll go through a little bit of the findings of each one of those. On the street, the bituminous pavement on the surfacing is in fair condition. The concrete curb and gutter was considered in poor condition. The street width is 35 feet wide. That's adequate. It's actually wider than a standard street. The city has indicated that road is useful as an alternate route for the parade, and so they do like that road to be a little bit wider than standard. So right now that street width is considered adequate. There are sidewalks along a portion of the street. You know, that first block coming in from Red Wing Avenue, there's sidewalks on both sides of the street. And once you get across Forest Street, there's sidewalk on the north side of the street going down to Spring. And then once you get past Spring Street, the sidewalk stops. There are sidewalks running up and down north-south on Forest Street and on Spring Street. Those sidewalks where they intersect with the streets, they simply come up to the curb and then just drop off. There are no ramps there. You might know there's a federal law called the Americans with Disabilities Act. You might have heard of that. And that requires that for public agencies such as the City of Kenyon, that if we've got public facilities like that, they need to be accessible for people with disabilities. So we will need to, in the existing condition, we identify that those sidewalks are not compliant with the requirements of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Turning to the next component, the sanitary sewer. As we mentioned, there's no public sanitary sewer on First Street itself. There are some public sewers out in the alleys south of First Street, but there is no sewer on First Street itself. There's only private sanitary sewer that exists along portions of First Street. And some of the issues that exist with the private sewer is there's no manholes like we have in a standard city sanitary sewer. So there's no way to access those sewers when we need to maintain them. There's no way to know the exact location of them. We have no plans of them. We don't know what exactly they were built out of, what their condition is, what their age is. And unfortunately, when there's a problem with the private sewers, the homeowner, thinking they're hooked into the city sewer system, will call the city and say, we've got a problem. And the city will say, unfortunately, we can't repair it. It's your responsibility and your cost to fix and maintain those sewers because they're private lines. So one of the big motivators in getting those switched over to public lines is so that the city can own and operate and maintain that system like they do the rest of the public lines, and the residents get the benefit of, if you're paying rates for your sewer, you're actually hooked directly into the city sewer system, and the city's doing the ownership and maintenance of those main lines, and so if there is a problem on it, the city will be maintaining and fixing those lines. Water system. The water system on First Street, there is existing 6-inch ductile iron water main that runs up and down First Street with copper services out to each of the homes. That was put in 1985. We do have the plan on that, so we know what work was done out there. And that water main is still good, still up to standard, so it's in good shape. There is an existing 2-inch water main that runs north-south on Forest Street. It actually starts at First Street and goes south. That is substandard, and the KMU, Kenyon Municipal Utilities, would like to upgrade that at some point to a 6-inch line. So right now it's just an existing 2-inch. There is also existing water main running north-south on Spring Street. There is a hydrant at the corner of Spring Street and First Street. That hydrant is an older standard, an older style. It's not to the current standard, so it doesn't match the other hydrants in the city and the parts and repair kits that are available. So that current hydrant is not up to current standards. Storm sewer system is in actually average condition. It's adequately sized. We do have issues with the locations at the intersections where the collection points are, those basins that you see in the gutter of the street. Because we've got to upgrade the sidewalks to put the ramps in, some of those catch basin locations won't work anymore because we've got to have room for those ramps to go in. So we'll need to upgrade those catch basin structures for the storm sewer system at the same time we upgrade those ramps. So proposed improvements, I've kind of been highlighting or hinting at some of them as we go through. But we'll go through the same thing again, the street, what we're proposing to do to the street, to the sanitary sewer, to the water system, and to the storm sewer system. This is, first of all, a summary figure. This is a figure that's in the report, and the report is a public document. The city will have multiple copies here at City Hall. If anyone is interested in coming in and looking at the report, reading the report, you're certainly welcome to do that. It's all public information once it's accepted by the council tonight. The city also does have a PDF version of it that we've sent to them that I'm not sure if that's going to be available on the city website. It could be made available if...
Yeah, we could email it to people.
Yeah, if anyone's interested. So all this information is available to you as the public. So this is a figure right out of the appendix of the report. And it's just a color-coded figure to kind of summarize what we're going to do. You can see the green line. Well, first of all, here's Red Wing Avenue, and here's First Street coming in from Red Wing, and goes over to Forest, and then we jump up to the top of the screen, and we go from Forest over to Spring Street, and then down to Bullis Street. So you can see the area we've got shaded with that darker gray. That's the area where we'd be putting down the new street surfacing, the new street section with the gravel and the pavement. The green lines are where we'd be putting in new sanitary sewers down the center of the streets. And you can see then the stubs that we'd be sticking out towards each of the homes that need the sewer connections. Not all the homes need it. In our investigation, we did find some of the homes that, like these homes right here, just east of Bullis Street, they actually are served off the existing public sewer in the alleyway. So they've got city sewer. But this home right here, that's served off a private line right now in the front. The homes down here on the south side of First Street, between Forest and Red Wing, they're served off an existing private sewer. So the green lines show where we would be putting a new public sanitary sewer to serve those homes. The blue line shows the water main. There's just a little bit we'd have to do right at the intersection of Forest Street where that 2-inch water main that I talked about that goes south. Out to the limits of our project, we put a new 6-inch line to replace that 2-inch. And then the rest of that 2-inch would be replaced at some point in the future. The red patches you see are where we'd be repairing the sidewalks. These blue at the intersections are where we'd be repairing the sidewalks to put in new ramps to make it handicap accessible. So, and we'll go over a little bit more detail on the next slides. So on the street, as I mentioned, we'll be putting in a complete new structural section. That's the pavement and the gravel, that upper part of the street section. We'll primarily be doing this due to the age and condition of the street to meet the recommended standards. The existing street up there now, we've taken borings in the street at several locations, and the existing thickness of the pavement and the gravel below it is not up to the current standards that streets in the city of Kenyon are being built to. So we want to get the new street built up to the city standards. And we can do that new section of the street in conjunction with the new sanitary sewer installation. We would build the street to the same width as existing. We've talked with the council at a work session about whether or not they wanted to make it narrower and bring it down to a standard width, but they said they actually like the street at the width it's at. It's useful. During the parade, it's used as an alternate route, so they prefer to leave the street at the current width of 35 feet. We'd be putting new concrete curb and gutter along the edges of the street. It'd be the same style that's there now. It's got a 6-inch high curb and a 24-inch wide concrete gutter. We'd put that same style back in there. The existing has to come out primarily it's an older curb. It's got some defects. It's got some places where it's settled and it's holding water. And so we need to correct those spots anyways, just with the street work. But because we're putting in the new sewer, everywhere we're running a service out to a lot, we're going to be crossing that curb. So we're going to have to rip out a chunk of curb at each time we cross with a service line. So we've gotten to the point where we've got to replace about 40% of the curb anyways because of either drainage issues or because we're ripping it out for the sewer. When we get to that amount that we're ripping out, rather than ripping out and doing handwork to patch it, it's actually more economical to take it all out and bring in and pour all new curb with the new curbing machines. So it actually is cheaper, and we wind up with a better job in the end. We wind up with a higher quality job because all the curb is constructed in the integral fashion by the same contractor using the same machine. It all comes out better quality. While we do the curb, we would be doing new driveway aprons as well. So there's only a small number of driveways. There's about 8 or 9 driveways that connect to the street in one alleyway. So when we go by and build a new concrete curb and gutter, we put a new concrete apron for each one of those driveways and for the alleyway as well, so they all have a standard apron right off the back of the curb. Concrete sidewalk, we wouldn't come in and replace all of the sidewalk. We'd only do isolated repairs where we need to do it. So at those intersections where we need to get the ramps in for handicap accessibility, we would be replacing and upgrading those sidewalks. Also where we're doing the sanitary sewer services again, to get those out to the property line so that the homeowner then can bring it up to the house, we'd be crossing the sidewalk, so we'd be taking out chunks of the sidewalk at each one of those locations. So we'd be replacing that with new sidewalk there as well. And then any of the areas we disturb outside of the street section in general, because this is an existing neighborhood with improved yards, we'd be restoring with sod. So any of the boulevard areas and the yard areas that are disturbed would get restored with grass right away again. You wouldn't have to wait for new seed to grow. Typical street cross section, a little bit hard to see, but what it's showing is the center line of the street, 17.5 feet out each way would be the curb line, so 35 feet total width. We're showing the new blacktop pavement we put on, the new gravel underneath that, what we call a geotextile fabric underneath that to keep the street material separated from the natural soils down below. But we would work those natural soils and prepare them so it's good and compacted and shaped properly to receive the new materials. We'd have the new curbs on each side, and then the sidewalks that are existing out in the boulevards where we'd be patching those where necessary. As far as the sewer, we would be putting a new public sanitary sewer main down the center of the road as we showed back on that figure, those green lines. That would be 8-inch diameter, which is a standard diameter main line. It'd be located right down the center of the street. From that 8-inch diameter main line, we'd then be extending services out to each of the homes that need them. And we'd go right from the sewer main in the center of the street all the way out to the property line. There's 28 homes in the project area, and based on our investigation that we've done to this point, we anticipate that 21 of those homes will need a new service. So about 3 out of every 4 homes out there will be getting a new service with the project. And now that will require coordination with each one of you because there's some different situations out there. So for each home that's getting a new service, we and the contractor would need to coordinate with you as we approach the time to do construction to make sure that you understand what we need to do and we understand where your service is, and we make sure that we're working on a schedule that works with you and we've got the activities coordinated properly. As far as the water system, as you mentioned, we only have to do minimal work on the water system because the existing water system's in good condition and currently and meets current standards. We would replace that one hydrant at Spring Street with a new model hydrant. We would at Forest Street as well, where that substandard 2-inch water main exists. We would replace that with a new 6-inch main out to the limits of our project so that it's set up that in the future it could be extended down Forest Street. There are existing water services out to the properties, and we will have to cross that. The sanitary sewer is deeper than the water main, so you can imagine when we're running down the center of the road, the water main, those service lines coming out to the lots, we'll have to cross those service lines, so we'll need to coordinate that as well. The city has indicated the preference is to keep those in service at all time and to have the contractor dig underneath them and maintain those services, so we will be coordinating that with the contractor and also with the affected homes as well. On the storm sewer, we would be constructing new catch basins at the intersection of Forest Street that would fit with the new pedestrian ramps we need to do. Spring Street, there things I think are set up okay there. We just need to do a little bit of repair where we're doing the new sewer lines. Other than that, just be where we're impacted by our construction. So storm sewer overall is in pretty good shape and just a little bit of work to do at Forest Street. Other general issues. The city owns 66 feet of right-of-way along the road. Most people don't think of this, when they think of the city street, they just think of the city street to the curb lines. The city actually owns a corridor of land that's called the right-of-way, and that extends 33 feet each way from the center of the road. So it's a 66-foot wide corridor running down First Street. We think we can do all of the work that we need to do for the project within that 66-foot right-of-way, which means we won't have to acquire any property from any of the property owners. We won't need to get any permanent easements from you as well. What we will need, though, for the lots that are getting new sewer services, we want to get those sewer services right up to the property line as far as we can. So in order to do that, we'll need to coordinate with you so that we can actually encroach onto your lot with the equipment so that we can get that pipe out there to the property line. If we don't get that permission from you, we'll have to stop it a little bit short, but hopefully we can reach an agreement with each of you as we're doing the work that we can get that line stubbed out as far as we can with the city project. Another issue we should talk about is trees. There are a number of trees along the corridor, and some of them are pretty large, and some of those are pretty right up against the back of the curb. There's a number of them between the existing sidewalks and the curbs. Some are right along the driveways, and some you can see the root systems are starting to heave up, either the pavement a little bit, or the curb, or the sidewalk. Now, from a practical standpoint, from a philosophical standpoint, we want to preserve as many of the trees as we can. From a practical standpoint, we're going to have to take some of the trees out. They simply will be impacted by the construction, and what we'll need to look at is the long-term health of the tree, the safety of the public. If we know we're going through with the new street construction and we're impacting the root system of that tree to where it might survive, if we just fill the trench back in, that tree might survive for 2 years or 3 years or 5 years, but we know that it's essentially on a short-term life once we go by with our project. It's better for us just to take that tree out rather than have it die and run the risk of it dropping limbs or falling over, becoming a public safety hazard. So we'll be looking for those types of trees where they're impacting our work, where we're impacting the trees. Flip side is where we've got a tree where maybe we don't have to impact the tree, but we know that if we build a new roadway, that down the line that tree is going to damage the roadway. The city needs to take into account the significant investment we're making in the road, and if that tree is going to damage that infrastructure, better off for us to get that tree out of there as part of the project so that it doesn't cause any damage to the investment the city's making. And some of the trees will just have to come out because where we're running the new sewer lines out to each one of the lots, some of the trees will be in the way of where that sewer line needs to run, so we'll need to remove that tree in order to get the new sewer line put in. One other thing that I wanted to bring up is there is the opportunity with this project. As I mentioned, the sidewalk comes from Red Wing Avenue now and goes in to Spring Street on the north side, and then it stops. So that last block from Spring Street to the park has no no sidewalk. There's a couple of small sections on a couple of the individual lots, but there's no city sidewalk that runs to the park. So we did identify that there's an opportunity, if the city is interested, in constructing a new sidewalk, so extending it from Spring Street down to the park. It would connect that route that's out there now, providing a connection to the city park. Unfortunately, the assessment policy says that where we put in new sidewalks from scratch, where none exist now, the properties along that section of roadway would participate in some of the cost for doing that work. So that's one of the considerations the city has to make when it considers whether or not it wants to add this sidewalk. So just to be clear, this is an optional improvement. If the city orders the project, they don't have to order this sidewalk, but they could choose to add it if they'd like to. So, taking all into account, we put together the costs that we think it's going to take to do all this work. And we've broken it down, and this table is on your handout, on the 2-page handout that we gave you. For the sanitary sewer, just the pipes out in the middle of the streets, not including the branches out to the homes, but just including the pipe out running up down the middle of the street is about $109,000. The service is to extend from the sewer main out to the property lines would be about $40,000. The water system and storm sewer systems are lower cost items. There's not as much work to do there. They're about $32,000 and $28,000. The street is the big ticket item because we've got brand new curb, brand new gravel, brand new pavement. That's estimated at $447,000. The sidewalk replacements, which is the work on the existing sidewalks, so patching those spots where we're crossing it with the sewer services, putting in those ramps at the existing intersections, that would cost about $40,000. So the grand total of all that, what we're calling the base project work, would be $697,000 estimated right now. So roughly $700,000. You can see the last line is that optional new sidewalk to extend it that last block from Spring Street up to Depot Park. That's estimated about $14,250 if the city wanted to add that optional work onto the project. Now, how the work is going to be financed is the city doesn't have enough money in reserves to simply pay for this project. The city would have to sell a bond in order to finance this project. So the city would be selling a bond for the project, but the city would also be utilizing assessments to the properties that benefit from the work that we'd be doing. And so we'll spend a little time here talking about assessments. Some of you may be familiar with it. For some of you, you may have never heard of assessments before. But there is a law in Minnesota statutes, chapter 429, that allows cities, when they're doing a public improvement that benefits properties, it allows them to assign a portion of that cost to the properties that are receiving benefit. It's called special assessments. And there's an entire legal process we need to follow to apply special benefits to the properties along the project. Kenyon does have an official assessment policy that was adopted in 2011, and it gives guidance to the city and to the city staff, the city council and city staff, about how to apply assessments to the projects. And one of the requirements of doing an assessment project is what we're doing tonight. It's the public hearing. It's the feasibility report that identifies the costs and identifies the assessments, and then it's directly notifying all the properties that are listed in the report and inviting them in for a public hearing like this so we can describe the work we're doing and describe the costs of the work. So this is part of the legal process that we have to follow. Now, I always like to start by saying we need to assess some of the costs, but there's a lot of the work that's not being assessed to the property owners. A lot of the work that the city is paying for out of its own bond that it's selling and its own revenues. So the work not being assessed on this project would include all of the storm sewer work, all of the work on the water system, removal of the old private sewer lines and the temporary items. We'll have to do some temporary things when we're out there doing construction. Those things don't provide any permanent benefits to the property, so we're not going to assess those to the properties. repair and replacement of the existing sidewalks, including those new ramps, that would be done as a city cost and not assessed to any of the property owners. And then because the street is wider than standard, we do a calculation for what it would cost to build an actual standard width street, and that's all that gets assigned to the properties. The city pays for all the cost for the extra width of the street. And so all of that taken together represents over $185,000 that's taken right off the top of the project and not assessed to any of the properties. So you can think out of that $700,000 that we showed in the last chart, now it comes down to the total estimated assessable project cost of $511,000. So then this is the cost where we start to apply the policy for assessments to the projects, to the properties. So, next slide. So first of all, we have to identify the area that will benefit, and so it's all the areas that's outlined in the pink color there. And again, the streets are labeled, or I think you can see it, but Red Wings Avenue out here, this is First Street coming in from Red Wing, down past Forest, past Spring, and down to Bullis. So all the properties on the south side, basically from Red Wing Avenue to Bullis Street, and all the properties on the north side from Red Wing Avenue to Bullis Street, and it includes part of the city park. Assessments, the policy the city of Kenyon has is based on the frontage of each parcel along the project area. And there's a formula that's in the policy that tells us how to calculate that frontage. In many of the cases, it's the same as the actual frontage that's listed on your property tax statement, but in some cases, it could be less. You know, sometimes if you're a corner lot and you face one of the streets or the other street, the different sides of your lot would be calculated differently because we can't charge both sides of your lot as the front. One is the front, one is the side. Also, the zoning. There's a couple of properties you might have noticed on that last chart, and that chart is in your handout. By the way, it's the last page with the pink map on it. There's a couple of the properties that are zoned commercial. Those are treated differently than the properties that are zoned residential. So there's some things that we take account in the assessment policy in the formula that we use. As I mentioned, the street improvements, the existing street's 35 feet wide, but the minimum width street in the city of Kenyon is 28, so we reduced the street cost down to a 28-foot width for assessment calculations. And then for this particular project, the city council has recommended that we assess 27% of the street cost to the properties. The assessment policy actually suggests 50%. But in this particular project, because we've got so much sewer work to do, and because some of that cost gets assessed to the properties, it felt to be too much of a burden to have both the street cost and the sanitary sewer costs all burdened onto the properties. So the city council chose to reduce the portion of the street costs from the recommended policy suggestion of 50% down to 27%. For public sanitary sewer, that's broken up into two parts. There's the main lines, so the new pipes and the manholes that we run right down the center of the road. That, per the policy, is assessed, 1/3 of the cost is assessed to the properties, 2/3 of the cost is paid for by the city. And that cost, that 1/3 of the cost to be assessed, is only divided among those properties that get service from the new mains. So if you're a home that's currently being served from a city sewer main, and you're not going to get a new pipe from our new main, then there'd be no cost to that property from the sanitary sewer. For the sewer services, which are the pipes that run from the main out to the property line, because that pipe serves just that one house, that's the only house that benefits from that pipe, that one, per the policy, is assigned to receive 100% of the actual cost of that pipe from the center of the street out to the property line. For the sidewalk, we mentioned that repairs of the existing sidewalks have no assessments. If the city council wanted to add that new segment of sidewalk, the policy recommends that 50% of that cost be assessed, and actually to properties on both sides of the street. So even though the sidewalk will only be on one side, the properties on both sides of the street, excuse me, would be assessed a portion of that cost. So we take our costs, and then we take the formula and the policy and the percentages that we're going to assign the cost, and we run it, all the numbers, and we come out with actual rates per foot that are summarized in this table. And this table is in your handout again, just for your future reference. For the street, what it came out, the calculations came out right now, our estimates would be $55.37 per foot. For the sanitary sewer main line was $19.17 per foot. For the sanitary sewer services, now this, because each lot is being served individually, this is calculated by the lot cost. Right now it's averaging $1,909 per lot. That number can be slightly higher or lower for each individual lot because each foot of pipe is going to have a cost associated with it. So if your service is a little longer or a little shorter, that number could go up or down a little bit. But this is the typical number that we've calculated. For the storm sewer and the water system, and for the sidewalk replacement of the existing repairs, again, those are all zero. If the new sidewalk was extended for that one block, we estimate it would cost $11.77 per foot. Now, we do have a detailed assessment roll that's in the feasibility report. I think most of you got a copy. It's that long sheet of paper, the 11 by 17 sheet of paper. I put it on here, but it was too small to see, so I took it back off. But that roll it's in this book, and it's required legally. We have to have it in this book. It lists every property that we're proposing to assess, and the exact amount that we've estimated for the assessment. And so all that information's in here, and you've got a copy of that in your handout tonight. Now each property is a little bit different because of the different footages of the properties. Some of the properties have the same frontage, so their numbers come out the same. But in general, if you're a typical lot and you're not getting a sewer service, the assessments were in the range of $4,000 to $5,000 per lot, and that would be for the total project we proposed. If you're a lot that's getting a new sewer with the service, then the estimated cost went up to about $6,000 to $7,500 per lot because of that extra cost for the sewer work that needs to be done. If you're on the block from Spring Street to Bullis Street and the city chose to add that new block of sidewalk, the cost would wind up being about $800 to $1,200 per lot for that sidewalk. A little more information on the assessments. This is just preliminary tonight. I mean, obviously all we have right now, we don't actually have a project yet. We've only got a proposed project. So all we've got right now are estimates, the best guess that Brian and I can come up with for what construction is going to cost next year if we went forward with the project. The assessments we've calculated in here would be updated once we have actual costs. So right now it's estimated so that we can give you the best information we've got. Once we actually do a project, if the project gets done and the construction is complete, we would have the actual cost that the city has spent, and we would update all of the assessment calculations based on the actual amounts. And then we'd have another public hearing like tonight, but that will be focused just on the assessments. And that would tell you, we're done with the construction, we've got the exact costs, here's how it came out, and here's the exact amount now that we are proposing to assess to your properties. You would receive individual notification, again, that's required by law, and that individual notice would show you the total amount that's proposed to be assessed to you. That's required by law for us to do that. Payments can be spread out over a period of time. If you don't want to pay it right away or don't have the ability to pay it right away, we would certify the assessments to the county and they would add them to your tax rolls. So it would happen automatically. That would just go right onto your tax rolls. And the city council would specify to the county how long they want those payments spread out. Typically, it's in the range of 10 to 15 years. And one last thing we do have to legally inform you of, Minnesota state law allows the cities the ability to assign cost and assess cost to the property owners. It also gives the property owners the right to appeal those assessments if they don't feel that they're justified. And there's a formal process for doing that. The appeal process, though, doesn't start until we have that next hearing where we've got the actual costs and we say we now know what the actual costs are and we now are proposing to certify those to the county and assign them to you. That's the time, if the property owner wants to appeal those, they would say, we want to appeal the assessment that's being proposed in their property. So, just a summary table, and this is also in your handout, just to show the breakdown of the costs. Again, this is the base cost that we came up for the project, just under $700,000. That's 100% of the work. Out of that, the total assessment, when we add up all the properties together, we'd be assessing about $172,653, which represents just under 25% of the total project cost. So the city, out of its funds, would be paying the balance of the project, so just over 75%. And just to note, this does not include that optional sidewalk being above and beyond the cost of this table. As far as the project schedule, this is a summary. We've got a very detailed schedule in the report that you can look at if you'd like. These are some of the highlights from that. Tonight, November 10th, we're at the public hearing. That's where we are tonight. After the public hearing, as I mentioned, the council will be considering this report, and they'll take formal action either to approve this report or to not approve this report. Once they do that, they can actually decide whether or not they want to order the project and move forward, or whether they don't want to order the project and move forward. So that all happens tonight. If they choose that they want to order the project, they would authorize Brian and I to work on the actual construction plans for the project, the detailed construction plans. It would probably take us about 2 months to get those done. We would anticipate bringing them back to the city in January, and they would be presented at another public meeting like this, where you could come and look at the plans that we put together. They'd be presented for approval at that time. Assuming the council approves them, we then set a time and date to get bids from contractors to do the work. We'd be able to accept those bids in February, bring them back to the city council in March at their regular council meeting. If the bids look good, the council would award a contract in March. Then we would do some coordination with the contractor. We would likely invite all of you in again to have a meeting to say, this is the contractor we have, this is the type of activity you're going to see, this is the schedule we've got laid out. That would probably happen in April of 2016. And then in May, when the frost comes out of the ground, we'd start the construction. The work would probably take about 8 weeks to complete. It's going to be a little bit slow going. Reconstruction projects always are, because we've got to maintain access to the residents. We've got to work around the other existing water systems and things that are in the ground. But we'd get it done in the summer. We think we'd have it done in time for Rose Fest we'd probably shoot for getting it done by August 1st, to be honest with you. And then once we have that work done, we know what the costs are, we rerun the assessment calculations, and we bring that back to the city in the fall of 2016, because we need to certify that to the county by November 15th in order for it to be on the 2017 property tax rolls. So, to summarize, the next steps tonight would be to approve the feasibility report, and then if the city is so inclined, the city council, it would order the project. If it does order the project, we would put together the detailed plans, and we'd bring them back for review, and then we'd have construction next summer. I think that's the last slide. That is the last slide. So with that, if you do have any questions now that we didn't answer in the course of the presentation, you certainly can ask them. We'd like to get your name and address if you do have questions, so that we can document your questions, and if we have to do any follow-up on them, we can certainly follow up and get back with you, but hopefully we can answer them tonight if you do have questions. So, Mr. Mayor, I'll turn it over to you to...
Well, you've given everybody a lot to think about there. Scott, did you have anything at all to add to this?
Yeah, not really. I think Joe kind of covered most of it there, so I think that's pretty sufficient. The only thing would be, if there was, and the council does move forward, there'd be another hearing. Joe discussed that. You'd receive notice of that, and there'd be a whole procedure set in there just explaining how the process would go to put in place the assessment. So that would be another separate hearing from tonight. This is only regarding the project itself.
At that point, I guess we're open for questions.
I just have a question regarding the tree you're talking about taking down.
Yes.
If that's a decision made by you to do the project, that part of the project cost paid by the city?
Yes, if trees, and that's a good question, actually the council had that question from you last week as well when we did the rehearsal of this public hearing. If we do have to take trees down as part of the project, and the trees are located in that city right-of-way, that city-owned right-of-way, then it would be a city project cost, yes.
I have a question on, apparently I'm at 515 First Street.
Okay.
My name is Richard Westfall. I'm apparently, I didn't know it, but I am apparently hooked up to the private sanitary sewer, the private sewer.
Yes.
Okay, when you disconnect me from that and connect me to the new one, will I have to have another plumber doing anything up in my lot to make that connection?
That's a good question. I had mentioned in the presentation that we estimated there are 21 homes that we'll need to do services to. Of those, we think we'll be able to reconnect 15 of you right away because your service has already come out towards First Street. So when we run the new sewer main in, as long as we can find your sewer, we'll run our new pipe out right up to yours, and when we cut your old pipe off, we'll connect into our new pipe, and you'll be back in service that same day. So for 15 of the 21, that's how we anticipate it would work. And Brian, I know you have the detailed list. For 515,
Joe, the one question that might arise is the old sewer line, existing sewer line, is Orangeburg or clay tile that's so you
Yeah.
might want to take and replace the line.
you certainly, yeah, the property owner would have the option to upgrade their line if they want. You know, if we expose your sewer and say, well, yeah, we can reconnect it, but your sewer line is in poor condition and probably should be replaced, that would be an opportunity for you to hire a plumber to have that work done. But now there are, as I mentioned, there's 15 of them that we think we can reconnect right away. There will be a handful, about 6 of them that we anticipate, where the sewer currently goes out the back of the house towards the alleys, and our new sewer main is going to be in the front of the house in the street. So we'll be able to run a new service line up to your property line and cap it, but then there are going to be a handful of properties that will have to hire a plumber then to take their current sewer and reconnect it to the new line that we extend. Yes, ma'am.
Well, connecting to that concern, I did several years ago, and Craig can attest to that. I believe I did upgrade, and I'm at 418 First Street, to the manhole with appropriate pipeline.
Yeah, you've got the shallow service, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, everybody knows about
Very
it.
aware.
So my question is then, tapping onto him, is that I should be appropriate to that point and would not need any other upgrades.
Correct. Well, we're going to lower the sewer as much as we can, the
Right.
new public sewer out in the street,
Yeah.
and then we'll be able to come up and connect back into your sewer system. But our new pipe will probably be about a foot lower than your existing pipe, so we can physically make that connection.
That
But-
was what I was hoping.
Yeah, but you would have the opportunity in the future, if you wanted to lower the rest of your line up to your house, you could. But we would get the new line up and we'd connect it back into your existing line and we'd insulate it, because it still is going to be more shallow than we standardly would put one in. We just don't have the depth to be able to get there deep enough. So we would insulate it and put it in, and my understanding, Brian, right, correct me if I'm wrong, but we would be able to directly reconnect to that existing service.
connect her back up
Yep.
immediately.
Okay. Second question then, I believe I would be one of those that is part of the sidewalk
Yes,
to the pool.
yes.
And I think that had come up in the past. I've been dealing with this situation since 1952, and I was only 8 years old at the time, but no. But the house has been a problem since then, ever since then. But I know the question has come up, so my question is that an optional meaning? Because that would take out a lot of trees and a lot of everything to connect. My sidewalk goes.
Yeah, you've got a segment
I've
on
got
your
a sidewalk,
Yep.
but if it goes extended, it's going to take out trees, and my question, do we have the option to say no?
Certainly, and that's part of the public hearing tonight. Part of the reason we have this public hearing before the council orders the project is so that they hear from the properties that are going to be impacted by the work. And so if you have a strong feeling one way or the other on whether or not you'd like that sidewalk,
Well, I'm
This
just
is certainly-
speaking for my neighbor as well,
Yeah.
because I know that would represent.
yeah, that will certainly, the council will take that into consideration when they make the decision. And keep in mind, if we don't do the side, we wouldn't have to do the sidewalk with this project. It would be most cost effective to do it because we'll have a contractor out there doing the street and repairing the other sidewalks. But if the city said, we don't want to do the sidewalk, either we don't want to spend the money or we don't think the neighborhood is in support of it right now, it could do the rest of the project and leave that sidewalk out. And that sidewalk could be added somewhere down the line if the neighborhood decided they wanted the sidewalk. And that it's a surface feature, so we can always come in and add it at a later date. It probably just cost a little more to do it later because it would be a separate project all on its own. But the short answer to your question is, if you've got strong opinions, let the council know that tonight, because they're going to be making a decision whether or not that sidewalk gets included in the project.
I just had one more. Doug Platt, lot 620. There is no house on our lot. It's just a shed.
Correct.
in the alley.
Yep, out in the back, yep.
Yep, so what's the water and sewer, I'm not even sure what's even coming into that lot at this point. I mean, the house burned down back in the 80s and there's never been a house on there again.
Yeah, from what we can tell, all the other, the properties on either side, you go out to the alley on the north.
Okay.
And so the best of our knowledge, yours goes that way as well. So what we do is we put the new sewer main out in the street, we'd stub a new standard service up to the property line in the front. And if a house ever gets built in that lot again, you'd be able to run the new sewer service and connect right to the city line. Yeah, so
There
we
is
have-
still water service.
Correct, there still is
That
water.
didn't burn,
No, but we have no water there.
Right.
I mean,
but the pipe is there.
the pipe is there, but there's no water to the shed.
But there was water service to, there was water service to the old house that was there?
I assume there was.
Yeah.
But-
Yeah, and that should show on the 85 plan, we can verify that. Yeah, but the sewer service, yeah, we run a new standard sewer service right up to your front property line, so it would be there for
Okay.
if a house ever gets built in that lot again.
So that doesn't shut off the existing water, does it?
No,
Okay.
Just a point, oh, when was the I'm trying to think, was 85 the last time that street was redone, or it seems later than that?
well, 85 was the last time a major project was done, and according to the records we found. That was the
Because I remember that was a huge assessment at that time.
Yeah, that was when the new water was put in.
Right.
Yeah, and from what I can recall, I have the plan in my office, I should have brought with me then. They didn't replace the curbing on the street, I think they only replaced half the surfacing on the
They
street.
didn't do anything with the sewer, it was.
Yeah, it was just water and then just patching the road enough to get the new water main in. Yeah. Now, the borings we've taken on the street, that 85 project showed, I think it was either 3 or 3.5 inches of pavement. And the borings we've taken, the pavement was anywhere from 4 to 6 inches thick. So there's probably been some overlays done, as the surface has been wearing out. There's probably been a contractor hired to come in and put down some patches or some new layers of blacktop and thickened it over the years. But as far as an actual project like this, the last one we're aware of was 85. Time flies.
You may have mentioned this and I might have missed it, but are there major issues with the sewer now that prompted all of this major reconstruction?
I guess we'd have to, I know Steve is here from the Public Works Department, I'm not sure of the maintenance records. I don't know of anybody that's currently has a sewer that's non-functional. There's nothing like that out there, no emergency situations that we're trying to correct. I know there is the shallow sewer service at 418. Other than that, I think all the sewers are functional, but it's more of, if we're gonna rebuild the street, as our 2010 pavement management plan shows, better for us to put the sewer main in now when we've got the street torn up, rather than, 5 years from now or 10 years from now, if we've got sewer mains that start to fail and the residents can't repair those private mains, and then they turn to the city, now we're going into our street, tearing it up to put in the new sewer mains. Just so you know, we did go out there and we have the ability to televise, not we, but there are contractors that have the ability to televise the sewers, and we hired one to do that. And they have robotic cameras that you can drop down a manhole and they crawl through the pipe and take video of the pipes. We were able to televise all the city sewers, document their conditions, and there's some repairs we needed to make on some of the city sewers. But we tried to televise the private mains, and either the connections, we couldn't even get access to them, the cameras couldn't physically get up them, or they ran into obstructions where the cameras couldn't even get into them. So, while we know we're not aware of any emergency situations with the sewer, we know there's problems with accessing it, and we know there's problems with the condition of it that we couldn't get it televised. So it's if you want to look at it this way, it's curing a problem before it happens. Is what we're doing. We're replacing that private sanitary sewer before it causes a catastrophic failure. Yes, ma'am.
Just a comment about Kenyon is unique to anyone who comes in to try to do any fixing of the sewer system, because the sewer goes everywhere and wherever, and there are holes to go to someplace that nobody knows where it goes. I mean, that's just a simplistic way of saying
Yes.
that Kenyon's sewer system is where we're at.
It's a little bit of a rat's
And
nest.
that's the
And,
reason.
and,
for the
and I,
request.
you know, and I'm not saying, give everybody the second to me, but I'm willing to pay my share. And it's excessive, but maybe not excessive, but it's a lot.